Hi everybody, this is Adam Curry. It completely turns the idea around, whereas we used to always say, tune in tomorrow, come back at this time, make sure you don't miss the show. Those words are now starting to leave our vocabulary because the show comes to you. This is one of the big aha things about podcasting, is that you no longer, as a content creator, have to make an appointment with the audience for them to come back and listen to or watch your program, but you can actually have the program delivered to them and it be ready for them when they're ready. The second one is, it can be about anything, and that is the true freedom of media, for it to be about any topic, any subject. There's no restrictions, there's, as far as I'm aware, that it can be about anything and it can be any length, and really breaking all the traditional rules of a broadcast. That's pretty amazing. So those two things combined, I think, is what makes podcasting very interesting. It's really not mass communication anymore, which is kind of interesting. It's more like micro communication, because we have a topic. A podcast can be about a very specific subject, and it may only be interesting for a very small audience. So, but of course we can have a massive amount of podcasts. So it is looking at mass communication differently. Instead of one message that everyone is given, and this is what we're going to talk about today, or here's what the news is, now we can have a massive amount of small communications that talk to smaller groups individually. So in that regard, yeah, it's kind of turned the whole idea on its head. Well, the challenge for any communicator, whether you're a writer or a podcaster or a painter or whatever you do, is to keep doing it. And I think that only comes from a passion for the topic at hand. All the other things are becoming much more easy to figure out. How to upload a podcast, where to serve it from. If it's not apparent to you now, you'll learn very quickly how to do it, and there's plenty of people who want to help. And throughout the years, that's become much easier, so it will only get easier to do. The actual production, I think, is also, it doesn't have to be slick. You don't have to have, a great voice, or you don't have to look a certain way. I think this is exactly what's so beautiful about it, is it's not determined by some corporation that you have to look a certain way. I mean, if you, here in America, look at Fox News, or any news channel, oh man, these women are gorgeous, they're beautiful, and they're so smart, and they know everything. But you don't have to be that way in a podcast, because there's no Fox News telling us how you have to look or sound or act. But the only way you're going to build an audience is to at least be passionate about the topic, and kind of stick to that topic. If you go all over the place, then it just may not be that interesting for people. I don't think there's no right or wrong in any of that. You can put your production can and probably should go everywhere you can get it. What you put in the video, perhaps, is you might want people to follow or subscribe the podcast, so that people, there's a lot going on, there's a lot of distraction, they forget, and that would be a shame if someone actually saw one of your videos, they liked it, and for them to not see the next one would be a shame. So you probably, in all of your messaging, always want to point someone towards a single place where they can get more, subscribe, interact, etc. So that would probably be a podcast version of your video, so they don't miss the next one. People forget. There's a lot going on in the world. So if at least they subscribe to something, and then they're bound to look at their iTunes or something. I'll go, oh yeah, that's right. I remember that. Oh, that was kind of fun the first time. And then you'll have that audience member again. Yeah, that's pretty critical. Right. Well, this, of course, is the biggest thing, the biggest question when it comes to podcasting. How do I make money with it? I've tried many different business models. There are many different ways to make money. There is a very interesting ecosystem that is building up, and if you truly have a product that people want, turns out they'll actually pay for it. And we also help them with their thinking. So we give you 4 hours a week, 16 hours a month. How much does it cost to go to a movie? If you take a date, it's going to cost you $40. So why don't you give us 10? That's value. Are you getting any value out of this? So you kind of throw a little guilt on them. That's always good, you know. And then we also hand out titles, an executive producer. So if you donated the most money to the show for an episode, we'll give you an executive producer credit at the beginning of the show, just like Hollywood does. Because what is the executive producer here? It's someone who invested in the film or in the TV series, so it's the same model. And it actually seems to be working. If you can build up an audience that is either large enough or relevant enough, money will follow. You don't have to worry about it. But 99% of all people will not make money doing it, because like any other art, skill, or communication, anyone can do it, but not everyone makes money with it. I'm not a big fan of interruptive advertising. I think it's a short-sighted model. I think it's part of the reason why people are moving away from mainstream media to podcasting in the first place. I do believe that if you have a sponsor and it is a product that is relevant to the audience, that you can, instead of it being like, here's a 30-second commercial, the host can talk about a product or a service and offer that to their audience. And I have seen people do that successfully. But really a hard stop, break in the middle, I don't think it does anything for the show, I don't think it does anything for the audience, I don't think it does much for the advertiser. As mass communication, as we discussed, has changed, advertising will have to change. And the advertising agencies and the companies that they represent and the companies themselves will have to change what they're doing. I believe that companies should become podcasters, and they should make entertaining content about their products that maybe people will be interested in watching or listening to and enjoy their products. That might be a pretty interesting way for them to go. That's really hard. Here's what we did in the United States, which worked out pretty well. I did a weekly show which was about other podcasts, and it was called Podfinder. Every week I'd put a new show together and I'd say, okay, well, here's some cool shows you might want to check out. And it was maybe like a 5 or 6 minute show. I kept it really short. And I would play a little bit and talk a little bit about each show and then move on to the next one, on to the next one, on to the next one. And that really helped people be exposed to different forms of podcasts. I think this is fantastic, because the hardest part is actually having a way for people to get it. The way the smartphones are being rolled out in Taiwan, that they have what we call a podcatcher, the aggregator that looks at the RSS feeds, at the podcast feeds, and says, oh, here's a new show, I'm going to bring it in and store it. So that's typically become iTunes. Yes. Which is not the best podcatcher in the world. So you have a podcaster and the podcatcher. So the podcatcher, I hope that there are some better podcatchers being built into the smartphones and the mobile devices in Taiwan. Because it's great when, you know what, here it is. Really look at what we've screwed up in America and do it better. You got a lot of stuff, a lot of history to go through. You can see what is working and what isn't working. And then what you think sucks, make it better, because you're at the beginning, and that's really great. That's a perfect opportunity. I wish we could start over. We might do it differently.